Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.
That in the background, by the way, is not Sabarkalot. It's somebody else's Sabarkalot. This week, Barney is sadly not with us on the walks that we're taking. And I say we, the grand we, because I am on holiday with family in the Isle of Wight. And that's where you join me for the photo walk. There's lots of opportunities to make pictures together on the photo walk this particular week. But Sabarkalot, he would have loved it. Wide open, expansive beach here. Where is he? He's staying with Grandma and Grandad. And he has them wrapped around his little paw, so he does. I've seen pictures of him. He's been sleeping on the bed. All those things that you say, oh, we won't let him sleep on the bed while you're away. Really? Oh, yes, you will. Let me get a picture just to start today's photo walk show, which is on location, the beautiful Isle of Wight. Ahead of me, there's this really, really angry cloud. It does look like it's promising to drop a fair amount of rain on us in about 5-10 minutes time, but it has these wonderful beams of light from the sun shining from behind the cloud, pushing through the cloud. And I really want to try and get this for you. Let me see, it's my sketchbook image. 1/2 f8 500 ISO, and here we go. Fabulous. So we start this week on the beach, although actually you will find as the show goes along today, we'll be magically appearing all over the island within often just a few moments. It's the photo walk, and I want to tell you a little bit about my very special guest that we have on the show today.
The foreword.
It took me a fair while to consider that taking and making photographs is more than just, well, taking and making photographs. It's a process for many that's one of personal discovery, and quite often that seems to be more important than the technical process of pressing a shutter button. And that learning process has been accelerated really by presenting this podcast. When I started my photography business, and I know for my other listener, this might not be so relevant because they never intend to, not now, not next week, not never, intend to have a business. But for the sake of sharing what this means to me, I've got a few thoughts that I've noted down here. When I started my photography business, I was in that in-betweeny career path of my life where I wasn't quite sure which direction to take. There was radio, there was management in radio, there was the possibility of a job in aviation, and there was, well, photography. I set up my studio with some spare capital. Spare capital, Neil? Where'd you get that from? I know. I set up my studio with some spare floating around greenbacks, as they say in some parts of the world. And I like to think I made a fair job of it, actually. If I do say so myself. I mean, it had a rail system for the lighting. It had a large double set of doors that I put in where you could bring product in as well as people. A changing area. It had a viewing area. I really did do it properly. I mean, the IKEA profits rose, locally anyway, and I sat back and I waited for the photography profits to roll in, with the grand master plan being that I would employ a small army of enthusiastic newbies to make my modest retirement fund, whilst I would sit back each day and watch daytime telly or something like that. That was the plan anyway. But I'd forgotten something reasonably important in this master plan of world domination photographically, or local world domination photographically. I'd forgotten the one word we talk about so often on this programme. I'd not factored in the most important part of the recipe for success. The thing that you need for starting the engine. The thing that's the really important, I think you've made the point, Neil, What is this important facet that you'd not factored in to become a photographic powerhouse? Well, I'll tell you. And I don't think you're going to like the answer. Go on, Neil, tell us, don't tease us. What's the answer? This is becoming a bit like Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy now, where Deep Thought, the great supercomputer, has spent millions of years discovering the answer to life, the universe and everything. And when it finally awakes from a deep computing sleep to reveal the answer to two people who act as guardians to this secret, it reveals that the answer, the great answer, the one that's taken millions of years to compute, to life, the universe and everything, is 42. And if you're an Adams fan, you'll now be revealing a knowing grin. So the answer to why my photographic world domination didn't really happen was that I didn't know, here we go, my why. Your why, Neil. Is that it? Is that all you've got for us? Yes, my why. I did say you wouldn't like it. I didn't really know why I was doing it. I didn't even really have a business plan with a why behind it. It was a bit flimsy. Up to that point, I had a why behind every professional endeavour in my life, but not this one. Because I really believe that having a why is and we talked about this on the Extra Mile at the weekend just gone, your platinum kryptonite. It's the one that gives you your superpower, not the one that takes it away. And Sue Flood, my guest today, has a sincere, very genuine why. She is an award-winning wildlife and travel photographer. She's a filmmaker, a guide, an author, a public speaker, and she's she can dive underwater with photography as well. So she's is she a dive master? I would imagine she probably is. And it's very clear to me that her why was and continues to be a sincere, genuine fascination for the world and the things that live on and within it. And what a grand canvas when that becomes your why. So I'm delighted today to talk with Sue Flood, who I've been chasing around the planet now for, I reckon, half a year, possibly more. And she talks today about so many things, including the great effect that photography has on our lives.
Today on the Photowalk.
One of the group asked me, do I meditate, which I don't. And then the friend said, Danny said, oh, Sue does meditate every time she picks up her camera. Yeah. And it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because actually, I guess that is a way of looking at what I do. You know, I pick up my camera and everything else switches off and I'm in the moment, and it's my safety blanket. It's what, I guess, calms me and just transports me into another world.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today those stories come from Sue Flood, Sean Tucker on making pictures and projects for you, Chris Waddell on the wonder of the good old pleasure pier, and you. It's a unique, special kind of podcast made from the letters you send in and the thoughts you have about making pictures, whatever and whoever you make them for, whether you're a full-time pro or somebody who just wants to collect life in whatever box you carry, so that one day you can look back and say with wonder, oh, remember when, with a question mark. No, this is a show about how making pictures makes you feel, what it does for us and others around us. And there are billions of people, 6.6 billion at last count, who feel the same way around the world, who have something that will make a picture. So we're not walking alone. In the mailbag today, a love for graffiti, part 2 in many ways, making pictures of peers, learning to photograph again with the wrong hand. What do you mean by that, Neil? Well, listen on, all will be explained. How photography can quite simply unpack you. A project sent to guide us from one particular extra miler through the last few years, or if you like, a visual way to navigate these times and the streets of Toronto. Shall we walk then? Checklist out. Very strange doing this, you know, in a studio that's not my usual studio. This is my holiday bedroom. Anyway, shall we walk? Checklist out. Coffee and Garibaldi's packed. Check. Boots on and laced. Check. Walking trousers or shorts. Check. Spare batteries. Check. Geolocation app activated if you are map logging your pictures. That's a new one. Check. A peg for your nose. As this week, part of the photo walk will be made after I've eaten in the world-famous garlic farm brasserie. Check. Earbuds in. Check. Lens caps off. Let's walk. If just for a brief moment I've come to the windiest part of the island, the Needles Old Battery, which is where the famous Needles Lighthouse is, and I'll get a picture of it for you, but I've arrived too late to actually go through and get a photograph closer to it. It's very, very windy up the top. I'm sheltering the microphone as best I can, but it's a wonderful view out across the Solent. I can see Hurst Castle across the way back there towards Portsmouth. Further to my left, or what would be the west if you look at it the other way around, will be Southampton, and all the way along will be Dorset, and at some stage I suppose Old Harry's Rocks, where we've walked on the photo walk before. Let me try and get out of the wind for a second. Hold on. The support for this show comes from a very special club, if you will, a very precious club. We have on the one hand our super wonderful extra milers, and I'll give you your due respect and mention later on in the show. But also, for 2 years now, we've been lucky to have a sponsor in mpb.com, and one that's been a really great fit when it comes to the ethos of this programme. And they have their own modest backstory as well, although they're a large concern now. As you know, they're a company that started from scratch in a back room, I suppose you could call it, in Brighton, but now have bases in Brighton and Brooklyn and Berlin too, which means if you live in America, the UK or Europe, they are there for you. And if you, like me, because you make pictures for a living or for pleasure, have the need now and then for new camera kit because you're switching up or you're trying to photograph something new, maybe you're going on an adventure that requires you to have a super long telephoto lens, or maybe a macro lens or a tripod or something like that, then do what so many people do around the world, including me, and be a part of the circular economy, where used is the new. Buying quality used with a guarantee. It's important for sustainability, and that is such a driving force now in the way that I personally buy. So my thanks to mpb.com, and my thanks to you if you've been selling, buying or trading through them. Right now for me, I have my two beady eyes on a DJI Mini 2. There's 3 or was it 4 when I looked earlier on today. On the British site anyway, on the UK site, and I'm really keen on one for a particular photo project which has grown over the last couple of weeks. I do have a drone, but it has finally told me it's not going to work, and so don't you dare pit me to this one, because it's a practically new, just 6 battery recharges, super lightweight, no fuss drone, which will fit perfectly with the idea that I've got. So if you're looking for quality used camera kit, you want to buy, trade or sell, then go to mpb.com. I'm wondering whether I should magically take myself to a slightly less windy part of the island for the next few words, but I will get a picture. Hold on a moment. Let me get a photograph of the... now, I don't have the right lens for this at all. He says, talking about lenses just now. It's a shot that's... well, the action's too far away from me, as in the lighthouse, but 220 shutter speed, f4. Let's make a quick sketchbook image. 160 ISO. Oh, the wind is ravaging my back. F4, here we go. Got it. Right. Let's go find somewhere a bit more sheltered. One of the fascinating things about this entire area is, in fact, let me put my let us down for a second and get a photograph out of these small rooms that seem to be dotted around the top of where the needles are. And I'll put a link actually to this on the show page today so you can see it. But it's a Coast Guard station rather, which I'll get a photograph of. And there's also a missile, I think it's a wartime, post-war missile testing centre. In fact, it's post-war, I think. And there's all these buildings that you can enter, some of them. It's a sort of grey slab buildings which once upon a time would have been used for the secretive missile testing. Yeah, I'll put a link to it. I'll put some history on the show page today because I can't look it up where I am. There's no 4G. Oh, no 4G. All right. Enough talking of missile testing sites. I've magically made my way, it must be about 11 miles. No, more than that. Well, I mean, the island's not that big. 15 miles if that, across the island. And I've come into now this is irony for you. I've come into private woods. What, Neil? Get off my land. Land? Yes. Get off my land. I know I spend my time talking about the right to roam and then saying, how dare they have private woodland? And then I'm staying at a place that has private woodland with all the access I could possibly want to it, and thinking at the same time, I hope nobody else is here because this is private. This is mine for recording my podcast. Oh, not quite as bad as that. But we'll save as I say, the missile site place is fascinating over the other side of the island. And there's a great amount of history. I learned a bit actually as I was leaving the area, and it was about the lighthouse, which was last manned in 1984. All the lighthouses in the UK now are effectively operated from a place called Harwich. And it looks after all the lighthouses all around the UK. The Irish ones as well, not quite sure. But that's where it happens. There's not a lighthouse keeper in person to be found these days in the actual lighthouses themselves, which is a great shame. There's a kind of romance that I've attached to being a lighthouse keeper. There's that island that I've talked about in Norway before, where you can stay and be the lighthouse keeper, which I think sounds fantastic. What an amazing photo retreat that would make. But I'm sure there probably is the odd lighthouse or four that you can rent in similar ways, perhaps, maybe, who knows, in the UK. So let's get to your letters. Let's get to the mailbag. That's what this show is all about as well. The letters that you send in while you're making and taking your walks. I'm waiting by the side of the railway here because the private woodland backs onto, this is fantastic. You know me, like a kid in a sweet shop or candy shop now. The private woodland backs on to a steam railway. Talk about living the real life of the railway, children. So letters. I feel we're starting with a second part to a story started last week from Edmund Zuber in Germany land. He found himself actually in one of my old stamping grounds, as you found out, Southend-on-Sea, in deepest, darkest Essex. And while he was visiting, he'd been making pictures of graffiti, as it's something that he, like me, likes to make photographs of. And also of late, street art is something we've been talking about on the show, and that's what we were chatting about during last week's photo walk. And I did ask as a sort of a postscript to Edmund, really, whether he would mind sending in the pictures that he'd made, and he did within a day or two. So from Edmund, first letter of the show. Here we go, Neil. Graffiti pictures. Attached some of the wonderful graffiti to be seen in Southend-on-Sea. We love the picture of Sir David Attenborough and the lady with her red glasses who seems to be watching you from every single angle. Now, these will be on the show page today so you can see them. And let me just say the Attenborough one, very, very pertinent today. since he gets more than just the passing mention on the show within my conversation with Sue Flood, for good reason. Oh, this wind. It's a windy week, a windy and always threatening to be rainy week this week. But it's beautiful, all these trees. Anyway, I'm digressing. But if you like to make photos of street art, Southend-on-Sea, Edmund, looks like it's a mecca in the UK to go and make pictures of graffiti. And the very first photograph that I saw that you'd sent through, the subtle, very, extremely well-spotted reflection picture that you made in a high street shop window of a bespectacled woman who's featured on this large street wall painting, where it's the reflection of her. Fabulous, very good spot. So make sure that, yes, you listen to this show, but then equally, yes, go take a look at the show page. Don't leave early, is what I'm saying, but do go make sure you look at Edmund's pictures. Our reason for visiting Southend-on-Sea, says Edmund, was to see some friends we met years ago in Le Marche, Italy, and found a wonderful friendship. They became a kind of role model for us, actually. Nina started just before the pandemic again to play piano and invited us to a spontaneous classical concert in their home. And John, so it's John and Nina, is managing a small company and finished his first book about the role of the pier and Southend-on-Sea, which, by the way, I know you know this, Edmund, but for my other listener, the pier is the longest one in the UK, 1.3 miles long. No wonder it has a little train to get to the end. But there is a longer one. I obviously researched, looked up, noted. It's called Progresso. It's in Mexico land, and that's 4 miles long. But I'm kind of not including that one because it's not really it's not a pleasure pier. It's a pier that's been built for ships and cruise liners to dock. I always think of piers as the ones where you can play the tuppenny game. Oh, tuppenny game, Neil. What's the tuppenny game? Well, it's where you feed your 2 pence pieces into a little slot, and they fire in, and then they push lots of other 2 penny pieces outwards. You know the one. You'll have your own version with your own currency, won't you? And you stand there for hours and you put loads of tuppennies in, far too many. On holiday, we put a tenner's worth of tuppenny pieces in because my youngest, Thomas, absolutely adores the tuppenny arcade game on the piers. And we played at Sandown Pier. And we spent £10. And you get small bits of what we call tat, don't you? Small sort of erasers or pin badges, or I mean really tat, and it becomes this challenge to win as much tat as you can. 10 quid. Guess how many bits of tat we managed to win in that time? Guess. No. Far too much. 3. Honestly, we could have bought that for about, I don't know, £1.22, but that's not the point, is it? Anyway, sorry, Edmund, digressing again. I'm on holiday. I'll digress a lot. They're role models for us, he said. We met them in England. Fantastic couple, so young and inspirational. This is John and Nina. Back in the room now, full of activity, says Edmund. The biting English humour we love. Nina turned 80 last year. John, 83. See? Age is but a number. Anyway, your pictures are on the show page today, and for inspiration, since we're talking about piers, I'm going to turn to an episode in the first. It would have been the first year of the podcast. I'll link to it in the show notes anyway, where I talked to Chris Waddell about his book called The End of the Pier Show, where we talked about this wonderful photo book, this project that he'd worked on. We talk a lot about projects, and this is a particular project that he'd wanted to make because it said so much about his childhood, these things on stilts that jut out into the sea where you go and play the tuppenny halfpenny game, or the tuppenny game. Wouldn't be, is it tuppenny? Oh, never mind. And so these piers, he'd made this project about because he'd always wanted to, made it into a book. And he toured the UK, did Chris, photographing every single pleasure pier. And we had a chat about his book, sat in the rain, because it's the great British seaside, obviously, on the wonderful pier in Brighton, on the south coast of England land, reminiscing about the magic of those places on stilts.
I guess my first memory of fantasising about being by the seaside would have been at school in Llanelli. I was born near Swansea, near the Mumbles Pier. I remember being at school with a friend called Alan, and we were sat on the school wall pretending to fish, of all things. But I just really like the idea of actually hanging my legs off a pier, and I've done so since with my kids, with crabbing and all this kind of stuff that we all probably enjoy as well. I think we all still love the idea of a pier, the connection with the sea. Some people might argue we evolved from the sea. Well, some of us. But yeah, I guess a pier, to my mind, transports you to another place. It gives you a sense of fantasy, the idea that you're going somewhere new. You could pretend you're on a ship, or you could just enjoy the view and scoff an ice cream. But this obviously is the epitome of a typical British seaside pier. We've got lots of little stalls with coffee, and we've got Brighton's best rock shop behind us, and all the rest of it, so there's probably some Kiss Me Quick hats along here somewhere as well.
I can't believe there's people walking past us eating an ice cream on a day like this.
There is, yes.
So, photographing piers, is there a method? Because as we've already discussed off microphone, there could have been a temptation to have made a collection of beautiful but very cliched images of piers at sunsets or sunrise.
Yeah, my method was to photograph piers in whatever state I found them as I arrived. That ended up becoming quite a strict approach. I didn't want a book, a 140-page book full of sunsets or sunrises. There are inevitably some of those within the book, but I would have struggled with a book that was presented as just picture postcards. There are some that are grittier, there are some with rough seas, there are some on grey days. There's a lovely one in Great Yarmouth of a really grey day with a kind of quite sort of spooky looking pier on a beach. The pier is completely surrounded by sand because the sea's out, and there's a dad with his son on a donkey ride in the foreground, and that struck me as archetypally kind of British summer holiday. We're going to enjoy ourselves no matter what.
Yeah. Chris Waddell talking about the book The End of the Pier Show. I'll link to it. I'm looking down the railway line. I'm hoping that I do want for the sound texture as much as anything for a train to come trundling down this stretch of track. I'm waiting for one, but nothing as yet. We are actually due to go to the railway tomorrow, so I may well record a couple of my Photowalk links, not walking at all, but being at the railway. It's wonderful. I love this about this island. I mean, I talk about feeling like you travel back in time when you come to the Isle of Wight, and honestly, stood here by the railway track waiting for a steam train to come along, I could honestly be in 1940 whatever or 1930 whatever. The last 3 weeks, the weeks go past so quickly. I've certainly talked about it on the Extra Mile show for our patrons, but our eldest, Jack, he broke his arm, ran into a beech tree. If you haven't heard any of the recent episodes, he was at a party playing tag, which is a pretty innocent game, to be honest. Two of them came careering towards each other. He dodged at the last second. She ran past, and Jack jigged right and found that mature woodland trees don't bend. Well, not as much as an arm anyway. Suffice to say, I've learned a lot in the last few weeks about how hard it is not to be able to do the most basic of things when you have a broken arm. The fact that it's his writing one as well, he finds that so, as I would, so frustrating. I had a birthday card. Was it your birthday, Neil? I didn't like to mention it. I don't like a fuss. But I had a birthday card from him, and he had to write the card with his left hand. He's right-handed, and it's his broken arm. His right arm is his broken arm. And he wrote me this card with his left hand. Honestly, it looks like he'd written it as a 3-year-old. It really did. but he did his best, bless him, got through it. Cutting up his meals, another thing. I mean, I think he's found a lot of this stuff quite frustrating, and helping him to dress. I mean, just doing up the fly button. Things like that you don't appreciate. Funny though, how he's been able to game on his Xbox. Knowing look between us there. But we have had moments, bless him, where he's felt particularly sorry for himself. So this is a very pertinent mail from Judith McDermott. Hello, Neil. A couple of weeks ago, I had surgery on my right hand. Nothing serious. Not too long, really, to be incapable of doing all the things I normally do, though it feels like pretty much everything I can't do since I am right-handed. I've mastered putting in my contact lenses. Now, that is clever. Judith, you should see me just trying. I've never been able to even put contact lenses in, but this is as much to do with the fact I'm exceptionally squeamish about anything to do with eyes. Honestly, have I told the story before of when I went to Specsavers? Should have gone to Specsavers is the advert. I did. But David, the most wonderful, patient optometrist, he was fantastically patient. But even he, across 90 minutes, it was well over the hour, he couldn't help me at all. I gave up. I've worn specs ever since, and it's a real pain, or becoming a larger pain now with photography, that's for sure. But yeah, well done to you, mastering putting your contact lenses in with the wrong hand. I'm brushing my teeth, which feels really weird, she says, but there's no way I can use my camera. I was beginning to feel quite frustrated. Oh, hang on, hang on, Judith. I'm going to get a picture, quick, and maybe even a whistle. Told you we'd get the steam train sooner or later. It came out of nowhere. Here we go. It's a saddle tank. Oh, I did the world famous sign for make a whistle. And he didn't do a whistle. Miserable. I shall have a word with him, Judith, tomorrow when I go to the railway. You didn't whistle for me, you miserable sausage. I was smiling and everything. Anyway, I'll pick up my letters again. Where were we, Judith? Yes, I was beginning to feel quite frustrated and a bit sorry for myself, and realised that, see, it's whistled there, but no whistle here. Get over it, Neil. I was beginning to feel quite frustrated and a bit sorry for myself, and realised that what I needed most was to get out for a long walk in the woods. You see, that's what I'm doing now. Judith, you are with me. We're with each other in spirit. Camera or no camera, she says. So I drove a short distance. Apparently there is no law here in America land preventing me from driving one-handed. What? And once I started walking, I really did feel the little black cloud over my head begin to dissipate. Oh, there's an aircraft that's going straight overhead here, which is appropriate, and I shall tell you why in a moment. What's that? I don't know, Neil. I can't see out the other side of this. Well, it's something quite old. I'll come back to that. You are keeping up with this, aren't you? Sometimes when I'm out walking, I do get distracted. So I drove a short distance, says Judith. Apparently there's no law here in America land preventing me from driving one-handed, which I can't believe. And once I started walking, I really did feel the little black cloud over my head begin to dissipate, as we were saying. But I kept wanting to photograph the beauty around me and capture the joy I was feeling. That's when I remembered the slow shutter app on my iPhone. I've used it before, but not for quite a while. It's just an app on my phone, doesn't really need much input, she writes, or talent, in brackets, from the one-handed user, thank goodness, in brackets, her words, not mine. But I did learn how to make my movements give me a similar look and feel as when I use ICM, intentional camera motion movement with my camera. I'm quite pleased with the results, and I've included a few for you to see. If nothing else, this will satisfy my need to be creative for the next few weeks. Thank you for making a wonderful podcast. Your words, not mine. Thank you. He blushes. I feel as though I'm amongst friends, says Judith when I'm listening. Well, thank you, Judith McDermott, because this, I would imagine, is both creative and technical advice for so many people who have broken arms or hands, things that mean that you can't photograph in the way that you like to. And I shall be posting those to the show page today so that you can share the visions that Judith managed to see with her iPhone using this wonderful app. And for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you will have had a sneak peek through Vero. And I've posted two different ones, one on Instagram, one on Vero. Two different shots from Judith, but essentially using this app. So thank you, Judith. I do like an achieved in spite of letter. So if you have similar, hint, hint, and knowing glance, please send them in to stories@photowalk.show. stories@photowalk.show. Now, just now, let me walk this way, hold on. Step through the brambles. Over here, in this part of the wood, and I might have mentioned this, because we did a photo walk here for the photo retreat earlier on this year, in the woods, just here. It's a bit grim, this bit, but let me tell you about it anyway. There's two crosses, James Michael John Willis, and hang on, the cross next here. Here's Michael John Peter Willis, 4th of September 2010. So James was born in 1968, so he's a year younger than me. Hang on, let's look at 1937 for Michael, so that was his father. And they were both airmen, I think, taking part in, it was either some sort of island race around the island. I think that's what it was. And they came down with their aircraft. They had a technical issue and came down with their aircraft right where I'm standing. Trees have, you can see that the accident meant that trees would have been destroyed, and there's sort of new trees growing here right next to really quite mature woodland. So it's quite obvious where the aircraft were sat after this terrible accident. And apparently it took hours and hours and hours to find them, because the canopy above me is quite dense. So anyway, Judith's wonderfully uplifting story, and my way of dampening the spirits there, so to speak. But there we go. Light and shade as you walk, isn't it? Light and shade. Let me go and take some pictures for you so you can see where I'm walking. I've walked into the woodland with Sam, who's a top forager, because she went on a foraging course, so we could practically just live in this woods off mushrooms.
Okay. So far, I've spotted a tiny little blackberry,
Right.
a couple of acorns, and some mouldy fir cones.
We're not gonna survive long then, are we? Oh, have you seen we're looking for a red squirrel.
No, I'm looking for a red squirrel.
Well.
You're being noisy.
No, well, that's why I walked away from you, so I could read from my mailbag. Have you seen anything at all, or have I now ruined it?
Yeah, you've ruined it. No, I saw a couple of birds.
Yeah.
I don't know what they were,
Right.
but they were flying, so I'm guessing they're birds. This is what David Attenborough does.
Yeah. We're talking about David Attenborough today. Sue Flood will work with David Attenborough. There's no way, I'm sorry to break this to you, that Dave's ever going to give you the call up.
Oh. Disappointing.
A couple of birds, but no squirrel yet. We're still looking. These are very mature trees here. So there was a red squirrel. This is the only place is it the only place in the UK you can see red squirrel? I think it is, isn't it?
No, there's somewhere up north you can see it. Nikki was talking about it.
Okay, that's our friend Nikki, but this is the Isle of Wight, which is...
Not the nature expert Nikki, just our friend Nikki.
No, but she is an expert, obviously, on where else you can see red squirrels, but definitely not here. We haven't seen... Well, we did see one, didn't we? We saw the back end of one 2 days ago.
That was Cyril.
Cyril the red squirrel. He was just crossing a road, but we haven't seen any today. No red squirrels. See, we can't eat mushrooms, there's one berry, and there's not even a squirrel to roast. We're in trouble, which is probably a good time to introduce somebody who would fare much, much better, I'm sure, if she were caught in the wilderness. And that is Sue Flood. She's my guest today, an adventurer with a camera, as you're about to find out. We've been exchanging emails now for a good few months. As I say, I think roughly about half a year. There's never ever been a right time. She's been in a jungle, or she's been in the middle of a savannah, or she's been on an icebreaker. I've never managed to catch a moment where she's had some time to have a conversation with us. But she did travel home, and home is in Wales, in the beautiful area known as Snowdonia. And so we managed to find some time to have a conversation. I'd like you to meet today a photographer who has, I think, quietly gone about her why in life, as we were discussing. That why being this deep fascination and overused word alert now, passion for making pictures in the wilds of this amazing planet that we live on, alongside extraordinarily amazing animals in very incredible vistas and landscapes and seascapes. And not many of us will have the chance to photograph with and for David Attenborough. Sue has. So here's the first of my two-part conversation today with the photographer Sue Flood.
Sue, I want to talk about your travels and the animals that you've photographed and the places that you've been in, but the story starts from somewhere, and I am intrigued to understand why yours is a particularly adventurous one, whether that stems from something in your childhood, adventures maybe with parents or friends, or how does it start?
Well, definitely with my childhood. My dad used to be in the Merchant Navy, and when I was growing up in a little village in North Wales, it seemed impossibly exotic to hear all these tales from my dad about his adventures in Rangoon or Shanghai or Tokyo, because he was always telling me these tales of his adventures in the Merchant Navy. And like I say, very, very exotic growing up in this little village in North Wales. So that was one inspiration, was my father. And the other, of course, being David Attenborough. Mm-hmm. And myself and my family would watch David on television, and it just seemed what an absolutely dream job. There, traveling the world, seeing wildlife, having these adventures. And they were the two people who inspired me and continue to inspire me.
An absolute national treasure as well, David Attenborough. Did you used to follow, by the way, Jacques Cousteau and people like that as well?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember watching Jacques Cousteau as a kid. And again, that's one of the things that inspired me to want to learn to dive. Mm. And when I first started diving when I was at university, it was just going into this new world and of being underwater. It was magical and continues to be.
So picking up a camera then, when did that happen?
Well, my father and my grandfather were in the local camera club. And I just laughed to myself about that, because it was a family joke, because my dad had so many thousands of photos of seagulls, of gulls, sort of a small dot against a blue sky. And yes, his enthusiasm was definitely outweighed the talent, I'm afraid. Sorry, Dad, if you can hear me wherever you are. So I was always around people who were taking photos, and I have a photo of myself when I was 2 taking my first photo, borrowing my granddad's Canon. But then I got quite keen when I was doing my A-levels, and my boyfriend at the time, he was into photography, and I went and bought my first camera, and And it's funny, looking back at university, my friends say, "Oh yeah, you always had a camera with you," and I don't remember that, but I guess I did.
I'm wondering if your father knew my mother, because my mum seemed to. Well, your dad was taking pictures of gulls. My mother, the famous photograph from my mother was always the red arrows, which would always be the speck in the corner. And you'd say, what is that, Mum? She'd say, "It's a red arrow." I don't think that's a red arrow at all. But moving ahead with your photography then, how did the transition towards, I realise there's a few years, but the transition toward what you're doing now, because the photography becomes more advanced, your adventures become more adventurous. What was that transition?
Well, it was quite gradual, of course, but although it seems to have happened in the blink of an eye now I look back. So I ended up studying zoology at university because I was very interested in wildlife, and I'd written to the BBC Natural History Unit. That's the bit of the BBC that, as you know, makes the wildlife documentary, saying, "I'd love to work with David Attenborough," and surprise, surprise, so do lots of other people. And a very kindly and lovely producer, Mike Salisbury, got in touch and said, "Look, we do get a lot of letters from people wanting to do this, but my advice to you would be, get some other things on your CV that make us take a look at you." So I'd done my zoology, and if you remember Operation Rally, as was, and Rally International. So I still miraculously, I think, managed to get a place on there. And my friend at university, Alice, she said, "Oh, let's apply for this." And I said, "Oh, God, there's no way you're going to get onto that." And, let's give it a go. And we applied. And amazingly, I managed to get onto this, and which led me to go and spend 3 months working for the Queensland National Parks and Wildlife Service doing various conservation projects in Australia, which was life-changing, to be honest, because I never dreamt I'd go to Australia. That helped me, it helped get the BBC to take another look at me, and finally got in there. But when I was in the Natural History Unit, my big break was getting a job on the Blue Planet series, and I was working with these world-class, actually cameramen, because all the camera people on that series, on the first series, were men. And working with these world-class cameramen, some of whom were really excellent stills photographers, and picking up things from them. But the last bit of the jigsaw was that I was very fortunate to photograph a couple of incredible bits of behaviour that had never been photographed before, which led to an article, and then something else led to my first cover. And then I was hooked, because it was seeing my work in print and then, improving. It was a big encouragement for me. So
I've spoken, Sue, now with a few wildlife and nature photographers, and it always looks to me a very glamorous occupation, a very glamorous way to spend your time. But those that I've spoken with are very sharp to remind me that there's a lot of patience involved. If you're going to photograph and record, as you mentioned there, particular behaviours, you have to be very patient. It doesn't happen in front of you overnight or within the first few hours.
It does not. And as my late mum used to say, "How come you're so patient with animals and not with people?" Actually, people saying that, "Oh, it's such a glamorous job," is one of the very frequent reactions when they find out what you do for a living. And I always like to tell a story about when we went to photograph and film harp seals, again for the Blue Planet, in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And we're out there all afternoon, myself, the cameraman, the helicopter pilot, the biologist. And after a long afternoon on the ice, I'd sneaked behind the helicopter, struggled out of my survival suit to have a pee. And long story short, ended up managing to pee in the hood of my survival suit, not realising I'd done that, as it flipped back, and then I tipped that all over my head, much to my enormous embarrassment. So that's a good example of it. But no, I always say I have the best job in the world, and it does involve enormous amounts of patience. And yes, I am much more patient with wildlife than I am with people.
I had down here a note about the we don't talk a lot on this programme about kits, but I think it's very important today, actually, because it's very unusual, the situations that you find yourself in. And you mentioned helicopters. And of course, over the last few years, so many advances have been made, and we see them on the television programmes as well. Things that we would not have been able to capture before if it were not for the wonderful tech that is now available to cinematographers and photographers. One of those, of course, being drones. And I wonder what you've seen across the years that has changed, that has pushed out the helicopters, brought in the drones, been able to photograph underwater much further down than you once were able to, hydrophones being used, all those sort of things.
Yeah, that's a nice question. It's an interesting one because absolutely, using drones, you can do all sorts of things you couldn't have done before and so on. For myself, because my particular love is behaviour, I love filming behaviour, and importantly, I want to be there with my eye to the viewfinder watching what's going on, rather than using camera traps, rather than using drones. Now, that's not to say that's not an incredibly skilled part of photography, and I'm thinking a picture immediately springs to mind, which is Tim Lehman's fantastic shot of an orang, which won Wildlife Photographer a couple of years back, where that was with a remote camera. So, of course, you've got to be massively talented to make good use of these things. I personally... I don't think I'm coordinated enough to be able to fly a drone and compose a shot. I've got visions of seeing a drone in the bottom of the ocean, as I've seen with several people flying drones in remote places. I don't want to disturb the wildlife, which obviously you can fly a drone without doing that. But as I say, my big love is wanting to observe natural behaviour and be there and press the trigger as I'm looking through the viewfinder, rather than use something which would, I feel, is sort of almost like a barrier between me and what's going on in front of me.
In terms of photographing behaviour and letting life play out before you, I'm reminded of a conversation with Henrik Saxgren, who makes these wonderful photographs in Greenland, but it's very brutal. And a lot of what you see when it comes to behaviour will be quite brutal, won't it? Nothing will prepare you for these harsh environments that you work in, seeing life play out in the most extraordinary way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a really good point, because I can think of numerous occasions where what you're watching is, a situation where nature read in tooth and claw, there's some amazing bit of behaviour. For me, you're excited. It's excited. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a thrill to watch natural behaviour, to feel like you're in the middle of a documentary. And I'm thinking of all sorts of examples, but most recently, so I take people on safari to Zambia, usually every year. There's a fantastic place in the South Wango Valley, which is one of the world's great wildlife hotspots. And the African wild dog, which is the second rarest carnivore in Africa, we were watching this pack of wild dogs hunting, and they went after an impala. And to watch the coordination of this pack of dogs and how they spread out and chase down this impala, it was just incredibly impressive in terms of coordination and the hunting strategy. So it could be something like, killer whales going after a seal, or whatever it happens to be, polar bears going after belugas, as I've seen, killer whales going after grey whales. But in this instance, it can be quite brutal, but it's nature. And of course, the wild dogs have to eat, the killer whales have to eat, etc. Although for many people, they find it quite hard to kind of watch that. But again, it depends on the behaviour. I mean, for me, it's the thrill of being able to photograph or film something that's perhaps at times not been filmed before, and that sort of adrenaline. It's the interest as a biologist to be watching this behaviour. But of course, as a human, you feel you're sort of rooting for the underdog, really.
How do you channel your emotional state when you make pictures? Nature, wildlife, landscape. They're all your photographic observational playgrounds, and it's a fact that they are changing and not always for the better. Is it anger? Is it maybe passion to show how we could be engaging with life differently in a rather more empathic way? How do you feel when you photograph endangered species or lands?
Wow, that's something I've never really thought about. I'm just always driven by the desire to try and capture that special moment, that bit of behaviour. I took some people a couple of years ago to the Antarctic, a group of friends who were very into meditation. And one of the group asked me, do I meditate, which I don't. And then the friend said, Danny said, Sue does meditate every time she picks up her camera. Yeah. And it's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because actually, I guess that is a way of looking at what I do. You know, I pick up my camera and everything else switches off and I'm in the moment, and it's my safety blanket. It's what, I guess, calms me and just transports me into another world. In fact, my best friend, I was present when her son was born. She asked me to be there when he was born, and I said, I'll come along as long as I can bring my camera because I'm terrified of needles. And like the thought of a big needle, I thought I'll be passed out if I got my camera there. So I've got this extraordinary series of photos of Henry appearing for the first time into the world. But yes, I was happy in the operating theatre because I had my camera there.
Isn't that interesting? I'm intrigued why you have a particular passion for the as you say on your website, it's the icy beauty, isn't it, of the polar regions is the way you describe it on your website. What is it about that place in particular that draws you? Because you go back again and again and again, and it's not an easy place to go.
Oh, but that's part of the fun. I just love working in the polar regions. To be camping in the middle of the Antarctic and you're woken in your tent. This is what I was doing in December. You're woken in your tent by the sound of emperor penguins calling outside your tent. Or to be, as I was a few weeks ago, standing at the North Pole, or you're watching polar bears, a polar bear mother hunting with her cub. I mean, all these sort of magical moments in the most incredible wilderness. And, frankly, you've got to have your wits about you in these places because ice can break up or you could get lost in a blizzard. I'm not talking obviously about when I'm working on the lovely icebreaker that I work on, but, perhaps if you're camping or doing some of the things I've done in the Arctic or Antarctic. But yeah, I mean, the Arctic and Antarctic are spectacular wilderness areas and very, very different. But there's not much to beat standing on the sea ice and watching a polar bear also standing on the sea ice not very far away, or being in a penguin colony in the Antarctic. It's unbelievably exciting. And having had, almost, I think, 60 trips to the Antarctic, if you were to say to me you're allowed one more trip and then you have to give up travelling, I would choose to go to the Antarctic.
Have you found yourself at the wrong side, on the wrong side perhaps, I'm going to use polar bear as an example because they aren't. I remember seeing it was, I don't know whether it was one of the BBC teams, but I do remember seeing a particular film of a cameraman sitting within a structure that was designed to protect him from the bear. Yeah. But they are enormously powerful. And it was really only a minute or so before he was going to be the next dinner, even though he was sat within this structure.
They are enormously powerful. They're incredibly good at what they do. But, they're the Arctic's top predator for sure. And yes, there have been some close shaves, but I say it's usually either people or vehicles that worry me rather than wildlife. And I guess that's part of being confident, but not overconfident, respectful, let's say, of the natural world, and not pushing your luck, and most definitely putting the welfare of the animal in front of taking the photograph. But I've had couple of things that spring to mind. One in the Antarctic where myself and my ex-cameraman Doug Allen, we were diving with leopard seals, and the leopard seal definitely became a bit too interested in me when he got out of the water and I was in the water alone. When Doug and I were camping on the sea ice in the Arctic during the filming for Blue Planet, so we're camping on sea ice that actually broke up while we were asleep in our tent and ended up having to be rescued by helicopter. That was definitely a very close shave. But yeah, and we have had polar bears coming close and very close, closer than you may like. But as I say, it's all about, respecting the wildlife and taking not unnecessary risks, just, not pushing your luck. But I'd far rather face a polar bear than somebody with a gun or whatever. And Ian Sterling, who's the world's leading polar bear biologist, he's absolutely brilliant. And I've been fortunate to make a couple of films with him in the past. And Ian always jokes that if you're going to shoot someone, shoot the person, not the bear, because there's a lot less paperwork.
And Sue Flood returns shortly for part 2 of her story. Catch my breath. If I sound slightly out of breath, you do, Neil. Is it another hill? Yes, it is. How did you guess? There's a lot of hills on the Isle of Wight, or I seem to find them anyway. But what a view! I'm looking back across the small stretch of sea to the mainland, then turn exactly 180, and there we go. I'm looking out the south, really, across the sea. What's that there? That would be, well, I can't see it, but that would be, I suppose, next stop, Jersey and Guernsey. And if I turn to my left, I've got a mallee's tree. Those who listen regularly will realise what a mallee's tree is. Let's get a photograph of it. Mallee's tree. Mallee Davis is one of our extra milers and a fantastic podcaster and YouTuber. I'll link to him. Note to self, remember, Neil, link to Mallee. Note taken, I shall do so. Mallee does these extraordinary pictures of trees. I've done a picture of a tree, which is a seamless way to say thank you to our extra milers, the patrons of this show who go the extra Photowalk mile to support this show for the price of a high street cup of coffee or roll of HP5, black and white film a month, or you can do it on an annual basis. You are quite literally the wind beneath my wings. Oh, I'm not sure I feel comfortable about that, Neil. There's always the pharmacist, But seriously, mon ami, the support you give is important for a myriad of reasons. Yes, financial footing to help pay the rent for the space we take online, the music and the flasks, and the lecky for the studio, the bobs, the bits, the dog treats for Barkalot even. Well, perhaps not the latter, but, the stuff that I need to make this podcast. But actually, your support shows something else much, 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 much more important, and that is that there are folk out there who believe in a podcast that sits in what is a niche environment, really. I mean, if this were a sports bar show or a true crimer, then the following those have, it's far easier to build and maintain, and that word is important, maintain. So thank you for the belief. To support the show and become an extra miler, go to photowalk.show, click the orange button that says support the show, and then enjoy the extra weekend episode called The Extra Mile, which is, it's been my personal diary, really, about thoughts on making pictures. And then also during the week we hear the replay unplugged interview shows, plus once a month, which is coming up. It's the first Tuesday of the month, so it means it's coming up in the next few days, really. We meet on Zoom to share pictures and just talk about making pictures. And the next one is, as I say, this coming week. It's the first Tuesday of the month, 8 p.m. UK time. Now, the clocks go back this weekend for us, but not for everyone on this planet. So do be sure, if you're coming along to that as an extra miler, to check what the time is in the UK. That's probably the safest way to do it. We have a little production meeting in that there meetup, which will include some show news this week about, or this time, about an Extra Milers weekly edition, which is coming up in the new year. Shh, we'll chat more on Tuesday. Right, let's meet another of our Extra Milers, Chris Parsons in Canada, or as we know it on this show, Canada Land. Hi, Neil. Every week I go for at least one extended 4 to 6 hour wander around Toronto to do street photography, and the Photowalk and the Extra Mile podcasts are always one of the things that I look forward to listening to along the way. I tend to go out on my own, and so having your voice and those of your guests in my ears makes it seem like I'm roaming the streets with a set of good friends who are also interested in the experiences of making photographs. If I might add one small possible suggestion to the intro. Go on then, I'm all ears. I use a GPS app on my phone to track my walks, so I can later add GPS location data to the photos that I take with my Fuji X100F. I also regularly forget to activate it until partway through the walk. So I imagine that there may be other folks who might appreciate the gentle reminder to activate their equivalent geolocation app, in addition to getting out some fresh batteries and packing snacks, etc. Consider it added. In fact, I hope you wryly smiled when you heard it added at the start of today's show. Anyway, says Chris, over the past few years, I've been documenting the downtown streets of Toronto to feel through how the city has fared over the course of that which is not named. Which, Chris, is a notion, isn't it? That's it's not been vocalised in that sense too much, in terms of feeling through a period. A sort of journey through the whole time, going in, travelling through and in, and coming out of the other side. And by the way, I shall post some of Chris's pictures on the show page today for episode 346, whilst of course linking to more of his work with the pictures. Though the ones posted today actually aren't of Toronto, but they're fantastic. So do go and see the work that he makes walking the streets. I found, said Chris, that doing so has let me process my thoughts of how I am faring, as well as those around me in our tiny condos, or as I like to call them, our concrete skyboxes. Photography, says Chris, has been a way to really unpack me, while also unpacking how the city actually is living around me. We had one of the longest runs of restrictions. I know you did. Which has meant that experiencing the ebb and flow through photographs seems a bit odd when I look back at images taken just a few short years ago. Truly a bizarre and horrific time, though one I've done my best to tirelessly document. I'm looking forward to eventually working with a designer friend to turn this chronicling project into some kind of book or an exhibition at some point in the next year or two. While I was on my first proper out-of-home vacation in 2.5 years in beautiful Quebec City and Montreal, I took real delight in some of the books that Extra Milers recommend. Yes, our lot are very good at recommending books, and we did do a book feature for a while. I am thinking about doing some more of that, although it might be within the idea that I've got coming up, which, we'll mention in the Zoom next week. But Chris says, I'd like to offer my own strong book recommendation, Masters of Street Photography, edited by Rob Yaram. Or is it Yaram? I think it's Yaram, actually. It's a number of the better-known and probably less better-known street photographers in there, and a number of their images, as well as their philosophies on making pictures. And it showcases that you absolutely don't need the newest and greatest of cameras to take absolutely exceptional images. The images shot with the older Sony RX cameras quite old iPhones, older Fujis and so on, reveal that mastery of the tool is what really leads to excellent street photographs. I regularly turn to this book when I either need to get some additional inspiration or find a way to try and convince myself not to buy that piece of kit. Though even when I do, I always do my absolute best to buy used and support the circular economy. See, you're talking our language. I've included a few of the street photos I took on vacation within this mail, and yes, they're the ones that I've popped on the show page today. I was also delighted to hear your interview with the head of Vero. Perhaps at some point you may want to chat with the folks who operate and develop Glass, another photographic community. Now, I've been using it for about a year, and it reminds me of what Instagram was at the start. All photos, no algorithms, no surveillance, and a very simple and easy to use application. You can check out the work that I publish here, and he's put his Glass address, and I'll be sure to put a link to that on the show page today, so that you can go and look at his work. Thanks for everything you do. Look forward to listening to you on my walk later on today. Chris, I look forward to being with you on your walk later on today. Looking through your pictures, you are a man who likes his compositions to sometimes sort of take us into the shadows. I love the idea, by the way, one of the photographs that you had, the idea of sofas just left out on the streets for people to meet on. It's a fabulous idea. Of course, you need the weather for it, but I thought that was a nice idea. But yes, your light and shadow play and letting the compositions grow from absolute darkness is wonderful. And I'm reminded of a photographer who, as well as everything else, I've always thought does that very well indeed. He's a good friend of the show, Sean Tucker, and I'm going to play a few words from episode 135, which was recorded actually a little bit before the book, The Meaning in the Making, was finished and published. But I do like, as you know, to revisit things and see how they tally perhaps with life now. And this is one of those moments. So the philosophical YouTuber Sean Tucker, here he is talking about photographing what you believe in. And there is stock, I take too, in his thoughts about those who support you. Whilst we're talking about our special extra milers, you see, I don't just throw this thing together, of whom Chris Parsons, you are one very special member. So here's Sean Tucker.
I get an immense amount of joy out of what I do, all round. The photography that I do, the channel that I run, and the book that I'm busy writing. And also over time, I'm slowly refining it into something that I want it to be more. You know, I'm working out, it's like anything. I mean, I suppose it's like podcasting, isn't it? The more episodes you do, the more you realize, I don't want to talk about that as much. I want to talk about this more. You work out what you really want to focus on. And that's exciting for me, because even though the direction I want to go is going to be less widely popular, I'm going to love it, and it's my favorite of what I do at the moment, and I think that core audience will galvanize around it. And I've always been a big proponent of the 1,000 True Fans idea, the Kevin Kelly thing, of build an audience who really care about what you do. That might not be 1 million, it might be 1,000, but they're ride or die, and they will be with you, and they will support you as you go, and that's far more meaningful to me. So in 2 or 3 years' time, I would like it that I'm not doing any tutorials for photography on my channel, that it is 100% documentaries with other photographers and creatives of any sort, like people who I'd like to spread it out to people who paint or write, or, you know, just people who do really interesting creative things. I would still like to be doing the kind of book stuff alongside that as well, sort of talking through other photographers' work or artists' work in books and what I'm learning from those, and then the philosophical stuff, and keep digging down on that as like the core of what I'm doing, which the book will complement, I think. That's
Sean Tucker. Always a delight to chat with Sean, and he has some assignments as well that he set for us. We've got Cara Mew on Monday for the last of her assignments for the moment. And I'm recording some more on Monday with a friend of the show, Marissa Roth, who is a mentor to new photographers, well, established photographers too, some very established, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see what she says. And I think we'll probably have one of Marissa's a week Monday. If you're listening to this in the long-term future, you know, like some people catch up months after, look back and you'll find Marissa's. Does that make sense? Oh, it's like an episode of Doctor Who. I've been making pictures myself whilst away on this photo walk. The photo walk this week is coming from the Isle of Wight. We've been on a week's vacation, family vacation. You heard my wife Sam. I didn't introduce her properly, did I? One of the bits just a short while ago today on the show. We've been away all together, and I've been making some walks out in the morning and sometimes late in the afternoon. So I've been making some photographs. We've had a glorious day today, and I quite like this. This is an opening to a field from a field. I've walked for miles actually. I've not seen anybody. It's quite nice. I like that I like my solitary walks. I do wish Barnes was here. Barnes, where are you? Where have you gone? I know, you're back home, terrorising Grandma and Grandad. They've been looking after him. Apparently last night, he jumped on the bed, claimed his space. Grandad came into the room, got growled at immediately. First time he's done that to Grandad. Right, let's get a picture through the opening. One of my sketchbook images, what I quite like is the sun is coming at me. So I'm not shooting with the sun, I'm shooting against the sun. So I'm going to set F8. Oh, Neil, does this mean you're going for a sunburst? Oh, you read my mind. And I'm underexposing slightly. There's quite a lot of UV along the way. Just before the land hits the sea, I've got the sun just to the top right of my frame, just bursting through. If I stoop down a little bit, bursting through the bushes here that separates this field from the next. There's an open gate which has got a splash of light falling on it. F8 3/40th, ISO 160. There we go. Aren't you going to do it twice now? No, I think we've got it. This was where the photo retreat was earlier this year, of course, the Isle of Wight. Next year's retreat is in Inverness once again in September. We were there September just gone, and it went so well, we decided to go back for next year's retreat. Whether there'll be one in between that, I don't know. I'm not sure actually, but definitely Inverness next September. And next week I'll at last be releasing the places officially for the next. We've had 3 show interest and practically put their names down and book as such. So I'll talk more about what we're doing, release the show page properly to go with it next week. We're off to the garlic farm tomorrow. We went to the garlic farm with our guests from the last retreat. And I think we all had enough garlic that nobody could really tell the next day. But everything, as you can imagine, is themed broadly on garlic. Members of our party are working out who's going to be the sacrificial one when asked, "Any allergies today, guys?" "Well, yeah. Can you do it without the garlic?" I think we'll be kicked off the island by 11 for sure. Right, second part of my conversation with my guest, Sue Flood. I think it's broadly recognised by those who regularly listen to this show and my other listener that I talk so often about photography being the great enabler. Cue the song, or cue song that sounded like The Great Enabler by Queen. What was that? The Great Pretender, wasn't it? Yes, it's the great enabler. It would have fitted into that song perfectly, and that's what photography is. In my case, that's been photographing weddings in the most incredible places like South Africa. I've been to Norway this year and France this year to photograph weddings. I photographed a story that I would never have attempted to make if I weren't a photographer. I know that sounds a bit silly because I wouldn't have had the interest perhaps to do so. But in Daytona, when we went as a family there, actually, making the people of Daytona story, all those sort of things, photography enables me to do it because it gives me a reason, yes, for sure, but it seems to give me a superpower too. Having that camera, definitely, there's a form of superpower with it. You lift your camera, you feel like you should be there making pictures, or you should be there asking people for portraits, and the camera gives you that, as I say, superpower to do so. It also brings you great friendships. My friendship with Giles Penfound. Were I not a photographer, I would never have met Giles, and it's been phenomenal learning photography from a master documentarian. My good buddy Kev Mullins. Yes, my reprobate buddy on the Fujicast show. Mullins, I wouldn't have met Kev were it not for photography. I mean, you can't win everything, obviously. And there's you. I would not know you if it weren't for photography. It is a great enabler. And of course, that runs through Sue Flood's life in every way you could dream. And some ways she probably couldn't have. Here's part 2 of my conversation this week with Sue Flood.
Let's take a moment to talk about the work you do as a dive photographer, which is, of course, an entirely different skill to making pictures on terra firma, isn't it?
Yeah, filming underwater it's a whole different kettle of fish, really, and it's I do that far less now than I used to. Probably the most sustained period was when we were working on Planet Earth, and we had 10 weeks filming and photographing humpback whales. And it just, 10 weeks is a long time to be doing one thing and getting up and going out on the water every day and getting in the water with the whales and seeing how you could improve on what you'd done the previous day. And it was magical. That's probably one of my favourite memories ever, is the chance to dive with humpbacks and to be literally an arm's length from them as they look you in the eye. And this is an animal that's, bigger than a double-decker bus, so 45 foot long, 15 metres long, and to be in the water with the mother and the calf for 2.5 hours as they're happy to let you be there in the water with them, and you watch them and they're watching you. I mean, what an absolute privilege. Just incredible.
This may sound like a strange question, but when you're in the water, and under the water in particular with them, what does it sound like?
Oh, that's it's incredible if they start singing. So I remember someone describing this to me and thinking that they were exaggerating, and the person concerned, this fantastic cameraman who's sadly no longer with us, Dieter Plager, and Dieter said that he was in the water with humpbacks and they started singing and the whole of his body was reverberating with the sound. And I thought, I can't really imagine that. It must be exaggerating. And then I experienced the same thing. And to be there when the whales are singing and the sound is so intense that you literally feel your internal organs vibrating with this incredibly loud and powerful sound. It is overwhelmingly lovely.
Quite extraordinary. And that sound again, and rewinding to the Arctic, I know you talked about the penguins, but whenever I look at it, and there's a particular picture of yours, the big blue berg, which was the winner of the Earth Photo 2019, I look at that, I see silence.
Well, that was a lovely, lovely day, actually, and it really was very intense. And it's funny, you say you see silence. When you're in the zodiac and you're slowly moving around these spectacular bergs, I'll hear the sort of popping. You'll hear this very subtle popping of bubbles coming out of these old bergs as they're popping, and you might hear a distant bird or all sorts of things, or the movement of the brush ice. But they are spectacular environments.
Your trophy room doesn't look too bad, Sue. You've been decorated with many awards, which I'm sure has been a sincere privilege of what you do and what you see and where you've been. And of those privileges, I'm thinking of one particular meeting you had with the late Queen Elizabeth. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, that was really special. And, I still can't believe that happened. I received an email actually, and I honestly thought it was a joke. Just saying, "Are you aware you've been invited to meet Her Majesty the Queen at Buckingham Palace?" And of course, you're not going to get an email about that. You're going to get, one would have imagined, some beautiful engraved card, etc., etc. So I thought it was a joke, and it actually wasn't. And so I had indeed been invited to this event with a beautifully engraved card, which had been sent to my old address. And I was at the time working in Vietnam, and so hadn't received this. And somebody in Buckingham Palace had the good sense to kind of get in touch with me through my website. So yeah, it was extraordinary. And I remember standing in this room. I always say I suffer from imposter syndrome, but, you're standing there looking at these extraordinary people, some of whom you're lucky enough to know and admire, David Attenborough, Michael Palin, people like Ranulph Fiennes and Reinhold Messner, Dame Ellen MacArthur, all these extraordinary people, and just think, what the hell am I doing here? There's been a big mistake. So, that was... It was magical. And then I never dreamt I'd be introduced to the Queen, which I was. And yeah, it was very special, even more so now. And you read about some of the things that people had to say about her, and people often mentioned her amazing smile. And it was that sense of someone being able to put you at your ease instantly. And it was a very special memory.
We often talk about imposter syndrome. It seems to be a recurring theme. You mentioned it, and you have worked with one of my personal heroes, who is Sir David Attenborough. I've never had the good fortune to meet him and talk with him. You have. How do you deal with that? Because you work with so many talented people. Many of those, I'm sure, who look at Sue Flood and say, "I'm not worthy to be photographing on the same rib as Sue Flood."
Yes,
but in all seriousness, how do you deal with that personally yourself as a photographer?
It's interesting, isn't it? I think that's sadly something that is an affliction for more for women than for men. But then I also think there's something good about that you thank your lucky stars that, every day I get up and think, I have the best job in the world, how lucky I am, isn't life great? As opposed to, well, aren't I great? And aren't people lucky to work with me? No, it's, someone used to pay me to work with David Attenborough, who is, as we often used to call him in the BBC, God. And he is the most wonderful person who, inspired me to want to follow this career. And so to get to work with him for 11 years was magical. When my book, my Emperor Penguin book came out a few years ago, Michael Palin had kindly written the foreword for it. And a couple of nights after my book launch, Michael had the book launch for his book Erebus about the Franklin expedition at the Royal Geographical Society. So he'd invited me along to this drinks event beforehand, and I turned up, and he was sort of waving at me and beckoning me over, and I could see that he was chatting to some man who had his back to me. And I walked over, and it was David Attenborough with Michael. Well, I hadn't seen David for a little while, and I had a copy of my book in my bag to give to somebody. Now, the first paragraph in the acknowledgements was thanking Michael Palin for writing the foreword and what a lovely person he is. And then the second paragraph was all about David Attenborough and what David means to me and how he's inspired me and, of course, millions of other people. And I just thought, this is the most incredible opportunity. I said, David, you're going to have to forgive me for doing this. But I took the book out and I held onto his arm and I read this paragraph to him about what he meant to me. Yeah. And I just got to the end of this and he gave me a great big hug. And that is still one of my top moments of my life. It was just absolutely lovely. He's brilliant. He's wonderful. And as you say, a national treasure.
Tell me about the work that you, there's a wonderful story, which I didn't know about before we started talking. And you mentioned it, and I'm really fascinated by this Olivia Harrison poetry book that's come out. Olivia Harrison was married to George Harrison. I couldn't believe that it's 2 decades since we lost George Harrison. That seems unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you've got some photographs within that book, haven't you?
Yes, Olivia has written this very beautiful and deeply personal book called Came the Lightning, 20 Poems for George. And, you know, she's a lovely person and also a very talented writer and poet. And I have photographed at their estate and was very touched that some of my images are included in this book. And as of course, a Beatles fan who is on Spurn, you know, it's lovely to have been involved with that.
But that's not the only Beatle that you have a connection with. Julian Lennon's White Feather Foundation. You're an ambassador for the foundation. Well, tell me more about the foundation. What it does.
I'm just thinking actually as we're chatting, Neil, that I hope this isn't turning into a sort of name droppers anonymous kind of interview, because I know we're touching on different people who are, you know, well-known people who I have this connection with via photography. But yes, Julian, we have sort of various mutual friends, and a friend of his was at school with my husband, and we'd met through a mutual friend. And his foundation does some fantastic work, conservation, environmental work, and he had heard me speak at an event and approached me to be an ambassador for White Feather Foundation, which I was delighted to do. Looking
through your galleries earlier, there was a gallery with people in it. It's not something that's immediately associated with you?
No, not at all. And I work a lot with a friend at the moment who's a really good portrait photographer, and it is a source of constant frustration how he makes it look like falling off a log, and I feel I have to work at it. And at the end of the day, you're still trying to sort of capture a special moment. But it's something I really enjoy, and it's interesting because I find it quite difficult. My ex, Doug Allen, he always says I'm better at photographing people than wildlife, but who knows? But I've just been doing a trip through the Northwest Passage on board this fabulous icebreaker I work on, and meeting some of the Inuit in these communities who just have something so special about them, and just trying to capture that moment, whether it's, and after all, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Whether you're capturing a special moment in a garden, of an animal hunting another animal, of a person, just that special moment that makes us stop and connect somehow.
What is life like at sea on these icebreakers? What is the day-to-day?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have worked on a wide variety of vessels. I've crossed the Drake Passage to the Antarctic in a very small 60-foot yacht. I've also been on what was the world's largest private super yacht. And there's a big difference between Russian working icebreakers and this extraordinary vessel I work on now, which is a hybrid electric.
It's hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah. Running on LNG and battery power. So, which is Ponant's French luxury company, Ponant's hybrid electric icebreaker, Le Commandant Charcot. So I spend a lot of time on this ship, and it's quite extraordinary being able to explore and have these amazing adventures, yet being in great comfort and obviously safety, but to do it on a hybrid electric ship. So it's a wonderful way to see the world.
You're talking about pictures you were particularly proud of. There was one that I always, without a doubt, will gravitate towards the pictures that frighten me the most when I put myself in the position of the photographer making the picture at the time. And the one I'm going to mention, which I meant to mention when we were talking about being in the depths, and you were talking about the wonderful whale encounters that you've had. I was looking at the great white shark picture that you took in particular, where you are in terms of position, it feels to me like you're maybe 3, 4, 5 meters below the surface, You are below the shark, and you can most certainly look into this great white's mouth with its row of razor-like teeth. What are those moments like?
Well, that was certainly very exciting.
I'd say.
I mean, it is exciting, no doubt about it. But I think that, sharks certainly get a bad press. And I suppose when I was taking that photograph, which was on a 15mm lens, so when I...
Oh, my word. You're close. Yeah, you're close then.
So when I pressed the trigger, I was about as close as I am to you on the computer screen at the moment, and slightly less terrifying. And I wanted to try and get this incredible streamlined body shape, and of course the famous jaws. I wanted to try and capture the beauty of this, incredible predator. But yeah, no doubt about it, it's one of those animals that makes your heart beat faster, for sure. Certain animals, and sharks being one of them, do elicit a pretty strong response in many people.
Where do you sit with regard to sustainability and the environment? And the programs that you've worked on are about what we are doing to our planet.
Well, one of the constant struggles I have is the fact that to do my job, I usually have to get on a plane, and that is the downside of my job, because I don't want to contribute to the problem, and no doubt that air travel does that. So I try to limit my air travel where I can. So, for example, trying to book trips back to back, so it's one airfare rather than maybe 3 or 4. Yeah. Also, trying to do something positive to hopefully offset part of my travel. So I pay a monthly amount regularly to the World Land Trust, which is a fantastic organisation, if you don't know it, which David Attenborough is a strong supporter of. In fact, I think he's the patron or president. But yeah, the World Land Trust, who do some fantastic things. And of course, trying to live in a less wasteful way, and trying to use public transport when I can. And, I'm sitting here looking out the window. We live in the middle of Wales.
Snowdonia, yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a constant battle to live more simply, and it's a downside of my job that I wish I could, just click my fingers and be where I need to be instantly. But that's something that constantly nags away at me. But as I say, trying to do something positive to offset that.
Where's the line between the sincere interest in wildlife, polar, and all these other amazing places you go to, where you're making pictures commercially, but also I would imagine you're also making pictures for yourself?
Well, it's a line. I mean, I make my living in a variety of ways, usually taking people either, on photography trips, or in this instance being a photo ambassador. But when I'm shooting, I guess I'm shooting to please myself. There's plenty of images that don't see the light of day, but they please me. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm competing with myself. I'm not competing with other people, which is perhaps an odd thing to say, but I am competitive, but yeah, with myself, I hope. But, when I'm stepping on a trip to the Antarctic, the Northwest Passage, whatever it is, I'm trying to find those moments which ultimately are going to be the ones that please me, and hopefully they'll please somebody else as well.
Just finally, as you mentioned the word moments, you did mention one already, but I'm going to try and draw another from you. There must be another. I'd like you to mention or recall a moment that really sums up your life and love of what you do when you pick up that camera. You've made that picture, you've seen something, and you've said to yourself, well, Sue, it doesn't get much better than this.
There's 2 images that immediately sprung to mind. One was the first time I visited an emperor penguin colony, and I had an image in my head. I wanted to be able to get the parents with their chick, and it was something I'd thought about and pictured in my mind's eye, and I have been very fortunate to photograph emperor penguins now many times over about the last 15 years, but there is only one time when I've seen them exactly like that with a little chick, and I remember pressing the trigger and saying out loud, "That's it," because I knew I'd got the shot. So that was super satisfying. The other was in June when I was in Zambia photographing this pack of wild dogs chasing and hunting this impala. And it was this extraordinary bit of behaviour when the dogs were chasing this impala. And I actually thought I'd missed it because it happened so incredibly quickly. And then again, this is where the animal behaviour, knowledge of animal behaviour comes in, because I was picturing what might happen and how fast they might run, and I preset things with a very high shutter speed and a suitable depth of field and so on. And then it happened in front of me and I thought, damn, I've missed it. And then I looked back at the camera and there was a very special moment as this dog had run into the side of this impala and sent it flying in the air. And it's a very dramatic split-second moment, and yeah, it was satisfying to get something like that.
For links to Sue and other photographers you've heard from or about today, Instagrams and websites, and Vero and Glass, go to today's show page, which is episode 346 on photowalk.show, or follow the link in the podcast player app that can also take you there. Sunday is the extra mile. Right, been on my hollybobs this week, as you've gathered, which has meant that with a few escape moments for my own thoughts, which have been, really invested in you and this podcast, I've also been thinking of some new ideas. New ideas, Neil. Drastic? No, not drastic. But I always find when the seasons change and we're just about to go into winter, in the northern hemisphere at least, and so I find myself doing spring clean. Spring clean in winter? Well, sort of. You know what I mean. So this Sunday for Extra Milers, some new ideas for winter. A change of season, I think, is always a good time to try some new things. And I've had some, I think, as we say in our family, natty ideas, which is Jamesonese for quite neat, if I say so myself. So I'll reveal those in the Extra Mile, which for those of you joining us for the monthly Extra Milers Club Zoom on Tuesday, we'll talk a little more in the production meeting part of our conversation. Right, I think I'm about to be got by a gun dog who's being bellowed back by his owner. That was a close moment. Mauled by a gun dog at the end of the show. Interesting way to end, Neil. Is that one of your new ideas? No, it's not. Right, the postscript in a moment. Our play-out song today is Small Rainbows from Anthony Lazzaro, who is one of my favourite voices, and we'll get to hear him in a moment. Actually, we've been chasing rainbows this week as well. There's been, you've heard it. I've mentioned it a couple of times, haven't I? That the rain has been chasing us down, but often followed by lovely blue skies. And he's coming towards me again. Look, I think I'm being rounded up by a gun dog. So we've had these incredible rainbows this week, but I've not got one good rainbow picture for you, and that's practically the story of my life with rainbows. People always think rainbows. I don't know. Is it me? But I can't. There's two things I can't photograph very well in life. Well, it's probably more than two things, but the two that come to mind are fireworks. There's a little piece inside me that, well, not so much dies, but gets quite anxious when a client says to me, "Neil, at the end of the night, we've got fireworks." And the other thing is rainbows. Rainbows, particularly at weddings when a guest, a well-meaning guest, to be fair, or somebody from the venue runs out and says, "Neil, there's a rainbow outside." I know that when I get outside, it's going to be some sort of usually weak, wispy type of thing that you have to squint to see properly. That then you pretend to photograph, whilst also being gracious and very happy in front of them anyway that you've been invited to photograph this thing that you can't really see very well. Oh yeah, rainbow. Oh, doesn't that look beautiful? Let me just get that for you. Delete, delete, delete. But yeah, so where were we? Oh yes, Anthony Lazzaro. The song is called Small Rainbows. Sorry, got quite lost in my thoughts there. This week's postscript to the Photowalk show this week is from a musician. Now let me read these song words to you and you can say, oh, Neil, yeah, softy you. Oh, and before I read these words, let me just say, I'll put a link to the why behind them and the song they come from, because it's possibly one of the most beautiful songs ever written about photography. Anyways, it's also this week's PS because I think it says so much about why we make pictures. These are the words. We keep this love in a photograph. We made these memories for ourselves, where our eyes are never closing, hearts are never broken, and time's forever frozen still. What about that? Ed Sheeran penned those very true words about this thing that you and I love.
Staring out the window on a cloudy morning, trying to lick our wounds while the tea is warming. Sometimes it's like a bird that's never shipped out. Sometimes you go around and I never run the rail. This week has been a mess, but I'm gonna tell you, we're a bit at work, gonna make it brand new. We're gonna plot a way for a comeback. We all need some time, and I promise you that. I promise you that. I promise you that. I know this can take a while, but it's gonna be alright, girl. And if it won't be today, I'm the shoulder you can cry on. So cry if you wanna cry. Small rainbows will fill your eyes. You cry if you wanna cry. And time will be on your side. Maybe we could drops lost in the ocean, drifters following the stream's emotion. Riders of the night with no destination, don't never know the name of our future station. We are lost romantics in a world that's frozen. We gonna be the heroes of our own novel. We just need some time. Oh, I know this can take a while, but it's gonna be alright, girl. And if it won't be today, I'm the shoulder you can cry on. So cry if you want to cry. Small rainbows will fill your eyes. You cry if you wanna cry, 'cause time will be on your side.
That's Anthony Lazzaro and Small Rainbows. I'll be back in the usual studio next week. I feel like I'm signing off from my studio in the bedroom, and it really is. There's my sock drawer.
That's it for this week. My thanks to Sue Flood for the voyage to the Arctic and other places. Sean Tucker, the philosophical photographer. Chris Waddell, still probably dangling his feet off the pier, which for us will be at Sandown. mpb.com, and those who are extra milers or patrons, which you can join through the link on the website, photowalk.show. Now, at the head of the show, I talked about your wine. In particular, I mentioned Sue Flood, and it wasn't a question I posed during the interview itself. So I wrote to Sue at the start of this week and asked her that question so I can include it at the end of the programme. And this is what she said. The thing that drives me to do what I do is to try to get people interested in the natural world and its conservation, whether it's with my still images or with moving images. To paraphrase David Attenborough, we need to show people how beautiful something is for them to want to protect it. So I hope that I can play a part. It's the only planet we've got. And I never forget that it's a huge privilege to have the opportunity to capture the natural world in this way. Well, if ever there was a why. Monday's assignment is the last set in the series from Cara Mew, and we'll be breaking all the so-called photographic rules. There'll be more assignments to come. It's just the last of Cara's. For the moment, links and further research to what you've heard will be on the show page today, and you'll find a handy link in your podcast player app to that. Music today is from the wonderful artslist.io, and if you're a filmmaker or photographer who makes slideshows, fabulous resource there, and you'll find a link on our website to that too. My thanks to Neil Ford for understanding how things work under the hood, Emily Renier for your eyes in our Facebook group, and Andrea Gilpin for making sure Instagram and Vero is engaging. And I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you, and talking with you next time.
The Photo Walk is a Loading Zone production.